for Mr. Benedict Gordon, CEO Asia Superunion, to do the same. Well, connectivity is what makes a Superunion thrive, and Benedict is passionate about foregoing deeper bonds between our people, our clients, and customers, correct? Can we have a huge round of applause?
Thank you so much, and a very good afternoon or good evening. So my name's Benedict. I'm the CEO of Superunion in Asia. Superunion is a global brand agency. First of all, I'd like to say a huge thank you to the organizers for inviting me to be here. It's a great pleasure and a great honor. Now, you'll be relieved to hear, I suspect, that I am the last speaker today. And being the last speaker is both a blessing and a curse. It's a curse because I know that what stands between all of you here and a cocktail is me, so I will do my best to be kind of compelling and short. But it is a blessing in the sense that my hypothesis, the future of brands is disruption, has in many ways already been proved by the speakers that have come before me. We've heard a lot today about this theme of disruption. Vivek started us off this morning talking about Godrej and was talking about just the unprecedented pace of change and saying that brands today have to disrupt before they themselves are disrupted. And in fact, we heard from Sabia from Fulcro earlier, who actually played the same image on screen. This is Elon Musk's own Tesla Roadster. In 2018, he sent this up into space, of course, on one of his SpaceX rockets. Apparently, it's already gone past Mars, and it's meant to be doing an elliptical journey around the sun. We'll see if it ever makes that journey. But I think Elon Musk and the Tesla brand are one of the kind of great global icons of disruption in today's world. Not just with Tesla, also SpaceX, also his boring tunnel company. In many ways, he's creating new categories, delivering new experiences, and breaking new ground in lots of different ways. So a great sort of icon of disruption. But I think in a way, it's reassuring to know that the future of brands has always been about disruption. This is the Benz patent motor wagon. It's not quite as sexy as the Royal Enfields that we saw earlier. This was launched in 1885 and really was the world's first kind of motor vehicle. So three wheels, an internal combustion engine strapped onto the back. Now, if I was in Germany in 1885, coming into town on my horse and cart to do some shopping, and I turned to my left and I saw this, I would certainly think that this was disruptive, right? That this was new, that this was innovative. So the truth is that the future of brands has always been about disruption. I suppose what's different today is just the rate of change. You'll all be familiar with Moore's law, right? Which says that the power of computer programming doubles every 2 years. Okay, doubles every 2 years. So again, Vivek this morning was saying that at this point of time, today, this very moment in time, is the slowest pace of change that we'll ever experience in our lives, right? Change is only going to become faster and faster, and of course, that has a huge impact on our jobs, the roles that we play as brand marketers. Now, this is a very ugly acronym, but I think it is quite apposite. So VUCA is an acronym that was actually created by the US military at the end of the Cold War, when the US had been used for many, many years to have one clear enemy. The enemy was Russia. And at the end of the Cold War, that changed. And so they moved into a world of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Now, I don't want to paint, it's the end of the day, I don't want to paint a picture of doom and gloom, but there's a lot that we've heard today in terms of that complexity and the challenge that this kind of landscape creates. And of course, the brands that we work with, the brands that we are guardians of, need to find a way to compete and to prosper and thrive in this world. And this, I think, is where disruption becomes interesting, because I think the most successful brands are those that are able to disrupt by creating meaningful difference. I was very relieved when Kantar came on stage earlier and talked about these two things, right? About being different, but about being different in a meaningful way. And I think it's this combination of themes which is really what's at the heart of disruption. So, of course, disruption is about difference, right? It's about innovating. It's about delivering something new, something fresh that hasn't been seen before, that meets a new need that other people have not met before. But it's not enough to be innovative just for the sake of it, right? There has to be something meaningful about that differentiation, about that disruption. So meaningful in the sense that consumers can connect, can feel an emotional connection. Just going back to the Tesla example, Tesla's brand, and it's interesting that we've just been talking about sort of brand purpose. Tesla's stated brand purpose is to accelerate the advent of sustainable transport. Right? So to accelerate the advent of sustainable transport. And I think, first of all, that's different in the sense that clearly to do that, you actually have to be a pioneer of a new category, right? The whole electric vehicle category has in many ways been pioneered by Tesla. They're not the only ones doing it, but they're probably the most visible, and they've been pioneers in driving it. But it's also meaningful, and this is the crucial bit, right? Meaningful in the sense that today, you know, we're seeing the effects of climate change all around us. People are more and more interested and concerned about sustainability as a topic. So by putting those two things together, that's where you create disruption. Now, if we're going to be meaningful, that creates another challenge for us, right? Which is that we have to understand our consumers. And of course, consumers and what they are looking for, their behaviors, their attitudes, are a constant evolution. They themselves are changing. We had a talk earlier about millennials, and how their behaviors are changing. But actually even more interesting is looking at Gen Z, right, the youngest generation, who are displaying new habits, new attitudes, and they are looking for something new from brands. Of course, they are looking for something beyond a product, right? It's the experience, or more specifically, the memory of the experiences that they have, which they value much more than products themselves. But they're also drawn to authenticity, I think, in a way, in a more acute way than previous generations. It's interesting if you look at one of the sort of the newest and most disruptive social media platforms, TikTok. So TikTok in India alone has, I think, over 200 million subscribers. And if you look at the success of TikTok with that younger generation, Gen Z, it's because it's a more authentic platform than some of the other social media platforms. If you think of Instagram, very sort of perfect, manicured aesthetic. Photographs are very controlled and with a deliberate message. On TikTok, it's much more raw, it's much more real, it's a little bit more kind of tongue-in-cheek, it's more fun, it's more playful, and it doesn't take itself as seriously. And that is drawing, that is creating relevance for that younger generation. Of course, there's also an increasing interest and focus and just, I think, urgency around sustainability as an issue. And of course, this is about environmentalism, it's about climate change, but it's also about social purpose, right? The roles that brands play in today's society. So if we're going to create meaningful difference for brands, then we need to be on top of the way that consumers are changing and their attitudes are changing. And I think it's interesting to think through the different ages or the different eras that brand building has been through to understand how that focus is changing. You know, once upon a time, it was really just about the product. Nowadays, for brands to disrupt, it can't just be about the product. Of course, product is always going to be important, but it can't just be about the product. If you think of the challenge that even a brand like Apple has in terms of convincing consumers that the small incremental innovations between, you know, an iPhone 8, 9, and 10, is that meaningful enough to get people excited, to get people to rally behind the brand? Even Apple is finding that increasingly difficult, because today to disrupt, it can't just be about the product. It also can't just be about the image. We saw earlier the really famous Think Different ad campaign from Apple. Well, nowadays, with the fragmentation of media and different kind of consumption habits, it's just impossible for above-the-line TV advertising to have the same impact in terms of building brand image that it used to in the days of the Apple 1984 ad and so on. So yes, image is important, but again, it can't be the only means to disruption. And even purpose. It's almost like we planned the sequence of talks today, because we've just heard about purpose. And even purpose, which we know is important, will not alone drive disruption in today's world. Yes, Dove built a very powerful platform of real beauty, but words alone, the brand talking to the consumer, is not enough. I think really this is probably the best description of the kind of the age that we are living in today, which is the age of experience. And all of those elements, product, image, and purpose, need to come together in a really compelling way in order to be disruptive. So when we think about brand, it's very important that your brand strategy and your business strategy are perfectly aligned and complemented. You know, it used to be that brand was, and it still is in some cases, the brand was seen as a derivative of the marketing function within an organization. And organizations were structured that way, right? The brand managers would be reporting into to the marketing directors. Certainly at Superunion, our belief is that brand should be the central organizing principle and be absolutely aligned and synced with your business strategy in order to be able to impact the experiences that you are delivering to your consumers. If they're not, then that becomes just infinitely more difficult. So, what I'm going to share today is 4 steps to create meaningful differentiation, meaningful disruption. These are not designed to be a dogma, but what I hope is that they will provoke some thoughts that perhaps you'll be able to take away and apply in the context of the brands that you work with on a daily basis. And what I'm going to do is bring to life these ideas with some brand examples from around the world. Okay, so the first step is own your idea. Okay, what do I mean by that? So let me introduce you to an airline. Level is an airline brand that's based in Europe. It is a low-cost, long-haul carrier. Okay, low-cost, long-haul. So there used to be a paradigm in the airline industry that you couldn't do low-cost, long-haul. You could do low-cost, short-haul, and you could do premium, long-haul. But you couldn't sort of break that division. Well, the IAG Group, which is a holding company in the airline industry, they own the British Airways brand. They own the Iberia brand, which is very big in Spain. They were facing a specific business challenge, which was that they were struggling to create relevance with a younger millennial audience, and they found that a lot of that specific target were defecting to other brands like Norwegian Airlines, who were actually pioneering a model like this, a low-cost, long-haul model. And so they said, right, we need to create a brand specifically to address that audience. We'll create a new brand because we don't think the existing brands in our portfolio can do this, and we're going to create that brand from scratch. Now, when I say own the idea, the purpose or the positioning, the idea behind this airline was to democratize air travel. Okay? Democratize air travel. So to say to that young digital-first millennial audience that, you know, it shouldn't just be the privilege of the wealthy to travel the world and to have the experiences of being able to do that. It's actually something that should be open to everybody. Okay? It shouldn't just be a virtue of the wealthy. So democratizing air travel became the idea, and everything about this brand was built off that. So from the name itself, the name Level, right, the entire ethos of this brand is about leveling the playing field. So saying this isn't about being a brand that's just for the privileged, that is just built around our business class premium passengers. Actually, this is leveling the playing field. We're a brand that's for everybody. And it's built into the identity itself. So you can see the logo here. Obviously, in the airline industry, most brands carry a flag, which often is derived from the country colors of the national carrier that they belong to. Instead of a flag of a nation, Level really carries a flag of a generation. Okay, the blue is meant to represent the sky, the green is meant to represent the ground. Literally, this is a brand for anybody, right? Again, coming back to that core idea of democratizing air travel and leveling the playing field. And it's a brand that speaks the language of that generation. So it takes inspired by the airport codes, creates a whole brand language that again feels like it's talking in a very relevant way to that audience. It's your world is the tagline, and again, coming back to that, owning your idea is all really about reinforcing this sense of democratizing air travel with a very contemporary digital-first brand identity. So I'll play a film which is a brand film that launched this new brand. Okay, so own your idea, make sure that it's absolutely embedded in every touch point of the brand. And this doesn't just apply in the context of B2C brands. I think it's equally important for B2B brands. So Deloitte obviously is one of the biggest consulting firms in the world. If, like me, you spend too much time in airports, you may have seen this, this latest campaign, which is running across most of the major airports in the world right now. So for Deloitte, their brand positioning, and this has actually stood the test of time, this has been in place for about 10 years, basically unchanged. Their purpose is make an impact that matters. Okay, so as a consultancy, Deloitte will come in to an organization and help solve a specific business challenge. So be that digital transformation, or be that a move towards greater sustainability. They are coming in and creating impact for the company, but also for the way that company, that organization, delivers to its consumers. So make an impact that matters sits right at the very heart of Deloitte. And as I say, what's quite extraordinary here is that has remained mostly unchanged for the last decade. Now, again, if you take that idea, what's interesting with Deloitte is that they have created a brand system and a brand world which is a very simple translation of that concept. So make an impact that matters at Deloitte is sort of represented in the green dot. So the logo of Deloitte is Deloitte and the green dot. And that green dot internally at Deloitte is a kind of a metaphor for this moment of impact, the mark that they are able to make in the organizations, through the organizations that they work with. And that's really delivered right across the experience. So Deloitte every year have a large presence at Davos, so the World Economic Forum. This is an image from a couple of years ago at Davos when Deloitte did a whole piece and a sort of an experience around millennials. Okay, so again, if you're talking to the C-suite of the world's global elite, and you are a brand that stands for making an impact that matters, it's important that you're able to educate your customers, your clients, on future generations and the way their attitudes, their behaviors are changing in order that they themselves can deliver that impact. Okay, so first step to meaningful disruption is own your idea, right? So own your idea and be ruthless about the way you communicate it, the way you deliver it. The second step is design to disrupt. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Again, let me give you an example. I'm sure most of you will be familiar with the BBC brand. So the kind of the national television broadcast brand from the UK. The BBC is split into BBC One and BBC Two. BBC One is for more, typically more for kind of mainstream content, and BBC Two has always been the home of more cutting-edge content. So more cutting-edge documentaries, more innovative comedies, more breakthrough dramas, and it's always been slightly the home of more alternative content. Now, for over 20 years, the BBC Two brand has remained untouched, and of course, the once very privileged position that the BBC was in of being effectively the only content provider in the television space in the UK has been severely disrupted by streaming brands, right? By the Netflixes of the world, who are digital first and come with a much more sort of innovative sense of the brand experience. And so BBC Two went through its own revitalization program, and as part of that looked at specifically how to bring the brand to life in the digital, in the TV space. And the most important asset or kind of real estate that the BBC Two brand has to live is in between, in the segments between TV programs. Because on the BBC there is no advertising. So one program finishes, another starts, and what's played in between is called an ident, right? It's an opportunity for the BBC brand to have some kind of visual representation, visual storytelling. And let me just play you a short film that shows how the BBC has reinvigorated these idents in a very disruptive and hugely contemporary way. Goes on, but in the interest of time, I'll move on. But you get the idea. BBC Two, that symbol of the two, is embedded in these beautiful idents. Deliberately, they're designed to be a series, right? So that they can be used in a way that's mindful and considerate of the TV content. So if it's after a comedy show, it might be something more playful. If it's after a nature documentary, it might be something with a slightly different tone. But when I say design to disrupt, this is a very progressive kind of approach to design. The BBC here worked with the world's leading sound engineers, the world's leading 3D motion designers, the world's leading animators in order to create this series of idents. And I think in today's world, you know, static graphic design is not enough in order to bring your brand, whatever that idea is that you own, to bring that brand experience to life. And today in the sort of new technologies that we have in our hands, it's possible to bring it's possible to bring your brand to life in completely new ways. So design to disrupt is about that, right? How can you be disruptive through the design language of your brand? Another completely from a different world. How many gamers are there in the room? How many people play video games here? Hands up if you're a gamer. Not many. If we were in a room of 16-year-old boys, everybody would have their hands up. Esports, as it's come to be known, is the largest subculture in the world. It's something that if you're not part of that subculture, you have no idea about it, as I didn't until recently. But if you're in it, you are hugely, hugely passionate about this world. So the esports league, the ESL, is basically the global kind of organizer of leagues that creates and facilitates the league and runs all of the major tournaments in the esports world. Let's think about that idea of design to disrupt when you're looking at this work, right? So the design platform, the creative concept that the ESL developed and decided to bring to life is this: hidden worlds. So what do they mean by hidden worlds? So this is a scene of this guy here is one of the best-known celebrities within the ESL world. And so what we did was think about how could we create these worlds where only if you're in the know, only if you are part of that subculture of gaming, would you be able to recognize either the person or the scene or the moment that it's trying to depict. Okay, so to us, this is a kind of a camouflage scene. But if you're one of these gamers, you know exactly what this is, because the images that have been used are truly iconic to the sport. Okay. Can you see anything here? Again, if you were part of the gaming subculture, you'd know what this is. Okay, so Counter-Strike is one of the Counter-Strike is one of the largest games. And these scenes that have been used as part of this design language are absolutely iconic within the games. So again, if you're a player, you'll be able to recognize and pull out these scenes. If you're not, then you're not part of this world. Dota 2, another major game. This is Hearthstone. And so you can see how that brings to life a very disruptive, very distinctive, very different visual language for the ESL brand. Okay, so second step in creating meaningful disruption, design to disrupt, right? Really don't underestimate the power of design to be an expressive vehicle for you as a brand and to create disruption. The third, think platform, not product. We had a really interesting panel discussion earlier that touched on this very thought. So Carousel is a Singapore-based consumer-to-consumer, C2C platform. Okay, so if you have, let's say, some old furniture, an old camera, some old sports gear that you no longer want, you can post that on Carousel, on a digital platform, and someone else will say, I want to buy that from you, and you can make that transaction. Now, Carousel was launched, I think, in 2012, and certainly there was huge buzz at the launch, and the brand started to scale very quickly. But as lots of brands in that sort of position face, they found some major headwinds in terms of being associated over time with being far too transactional, right? So really just being about the transactions and being much more of a sort of a functional brand. And they wanted to address that. And when we looked at the space, what was really interesting is that actually it looked like there was a lot of white space for a brand to connect more meaningfully with consumers, right? Not just to be about the platform itself and about the transaction, but to be about something more, to create more of an emotional connection. And again, I go back to that idea of meaningful difference, right? So that top right space of a more meaningful connection. And what Carousel also knew was that they had some beautiful, very human stories about these relationships that were being created by people using their platform. So on the left-hand side here, you can see a picture of a camera. A photography specialist was getting rid of a camera that they no longer needed, and they sold it to a younger person, a guy who was actually just interested in photography but just starting out on his journey, and who was looking to learn photography and take it up as a hobby, but also needed instruction and tutorials. And so because there's a physical connection, on Carousel you post the item that you want to sell, but you actually have to physically meet the person who's going to be buying it for them to check the product and make sure that they still want to go ahead with the transaction. So what they're doing is actually bringing people together. They're creating these human stories and these human connections. And so they saw an opportunity to elevate that into a brand platform that positions Carousel not just about the product, right, about the technical transaction, but is about something bigger, a platform that is about bringing people together. And they encapsulated it in this statement, share possible. People opening avenues for each other while improving their own lives through buying and selling. So a bigger, more emotive a connection, and a bigger, more emotive purpose, which really helps to elevate the brand. Okay, and that was brought to life in a visual identity, which is all about helping to tell those human stories about the connection that the brand makes.
This is Adam. Adam's opening a cafe and he's looking for a pot. This is Auntie May. Auntie May's home is a place for all things old school.
There's a story behind everything.
Even the feather duster?
Yes, I use it on people who ask stupid questions.
Okay.
This recipe says I need a cast iron pot. The older the better.
I might know someone. Hey, Auntie May, is your pot? Oh. The two met, had a chat,
Hi, I'm Adam.
Hi, I'm Auntie May.
and shared some stew.
Tastes just like my grandma's.
My secret is the pot.
Auntie May stew? Aww. And it all began with a pot. When an old pot leads to new friendships, everyone wins. Carousel.
Okay, so share possible became the thought at the heart of that platform, not just thinking about the brand as a product. Okay, and I'm out of time, so I'll be very quick with this, but I guess the last step is almost like a challenge to yourselves, really, is when you go back to thinking about, you know, the brands that you work with, the brands that you're guardians of, how can you go beyond, right? Because in today's world, if we go back to the landscape that we painted at the beginning, in this very complex, fast-moving environment, sometimes to be disruptive, you just have to do something which is completely unexpected and completely original in the category. I just have one final example, which is the London Symphony Orchestra. Now, if you think of symphony orchestras, you tend to think of classical music, you think of auditoriums, you think of live orchestral music, but you also think of a very mature audience, and you probably don't think of something that feels very exciting or very contemporary or very relevant to a younger audience. And the LSO was very worried about this because obviously that is the future of their organization, their brand. And so they challenged themselves to think about how can we go beyond in the way that we bring our brand and our experience to life. So, thank you. I'll skip this just because we're running out of time. But that work for the LSO has won every Creative Award under the sun. And it's just a great example of thinking in a very category unconventional way. And again, I just challenge you all to think about how you can go beyond for your brands. So in summary, the future of brands will always be about disruption, right? It's just the truth. And so when we think about disruption, it isn't just about being different, it's also about being meaningful, right? Meaningful difference. And that means really focusing on the experience, because that's where the disruption needs to come to the forefront. And that's about putting creativity, creative thinking, innovation, and disruption at the heart of the business, so aligning business and brand strategy. And then 4 steps, at least to think about, in relation to meaningful disruption. Own your idea and be ruthless about the way you communicate it. Design to disrupt. Think platform, not product. And finally, when you can and when the moment is right, go beyond. Thank you very much.